Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thrivecast. I'm so excited about our guests. You know, we love to bring people in and really talk about our profession, what it means, and people who have been in the profession a long time can really give us a lot of insights. And I have my friend and actually a guest on the podcast before, Bill Sheridan. I just want to give a little intro. A lot of people know Bill Sheridan. He's been working with Tom Hood at the Maryland Association of CPAs for a long time as Chief Communications Officer. So has been there a long time, has started their CPA Success blog, is a podcaster, has had major people on the show, and has been top 100 person in accounting. Just talks a lot about strategic use of social media, and he can give a lot of insights into our profession. So I'm pumped to have Bill on the show. So thanks, Bill, for joining us on the Thrivecast, man. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. It's been too long since we've talked.
It has.
And so I'm real excited to be here. So thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, it's cool since we got our Thrivecast in the studio and on YouTube as a video cast. It's cool. People can now see our guests and see your beautiful face as we talk about things in the profession. So
you're much too kind.
Well, let's dive in. So, Bill, I could probably sit down and drink a beer with you for about 4 or 5 hours about all the things we have learned together. So I want to dive in and just know that you're not an accountant, right? But you have been in the profession like almost longer than a lot of other accountants I know. So how did you get into what you're doing? I mean, you're a journalist by trade, I think, right? Or is that a wrong word?
No, not at all. It is a little weird and a kind of a strange career path. I am a journalist by trade. Started out the old-fashioned way, like back in newspapers, and moved on to online journalism and that type of thing. And then finally, at one point, I just decided, I was tired of the work until 2 a.m. pumping out copy and stuff like that, and wanted to settle down a little bit. And so I made the jump to kind of corporate communications. And so I've been with the MACPA. I joined in October of 2000, so 21 years now.
Wow.
I like to tell people, no, I'm not a CPA. But I play one on TV. So
and you do,
it's been weird, but it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, I came in not knowing anything about the profession and just kind of learned the ropes from working with some really smart people, including Tom Hood, who you mentioned, and Jackie Brown, and folks like you that I've met at events throughout the country. So it's been a really kind of cool ride. And I always like to tell people that what I do hasn't changed. I still consider myself kind of someone who spends all of his time informing people, right? Yeah. And I've done that every step of my career. Yeah. It's just that how I do it and who I do it for has changed a lot. So, but I still get to do the stuff that I've been passionate about right from the start. So.
Yeah, very cool. Well, the stuff you put out is so good. I mean, you're not only a journalist or writer, you're an instructor. So you do a lot of leadership work too, and so you teach and things. So you're a great person to dive into. And I guess this show I want to dive into really just trends and patterns in our profession. I feel like I've been diving into that a lot in a lot of our podcasts lately. But there's a lot of things going on right now that we're early in the trajectory of a lot of the changes and the cultural shifts. And so we don't know what they mean a lot of times. And as you know, until you look backwards, you go, oh, I see what was happening then. And so, and so I want to try to figure out what's going on now. So what are two or three big changes, I guess, you're seeing happen that have happened right now that really are going to be significant for the future? I mean, these are just guesses, I know, but predict the future, Bill.
Well, if I could do that, I wouldn't be here, I guess. But I think some of the ones that I was going to mention are things that we've been talking about for a number of years now. I mean, number one, obviously, is technology.
Yeah, for sure. Still
is changing at an exponential pace, and it's it's continuing to change every corner of the profession, right? Audit, tax, finance are all, I mean, nobody's
big time
immune from this type of stuff. And that in turn, I think, is changing what accountants need to know and do to remain relevant. It's just a different profession today, kind of thanks to these changes in technology. And it's taken a while for a lot of these technologies that we've been talking about to kind of gain traction in the profession. I think, and it's like with any new technology, things get hyped really high at the beginning, and expectations are huge.
Yeah.
And then but I think we kind of jump the gun a lot of ways, and the hype cycle kind of goes in peaks and valleys and until it really finds its footing and does what it ultimately is going to do for us. So I think we've gone through a number of those peaks and valleys with some of those technologies, and it's starting to emerge in ways that we can now act on and change our businesses at the same time. So technology was one. I think legislation and regulation is another one. We're seeing more of it. And it's more, the stuff we are seeing is more impactful. I think you only need to look at, like the last couple of tax seasons to see that trend at play. And if I had to pick a third one, I don't know, I guess I'd say COVID. We're still dealing with the pandemic, as cliche as it sounds, but I think the pandemic has changed so much of what we do, and where our people work, how they work, what they expect from their employers. And of course our clients are dealing with all that as well, and so they're looking to us for answers. And I really think that this pandemic, it's not some short-term thing that we're going to get over and go back to the way things were. I think it has fundamentally changed a lot of what we do in the workforce. So I think that's a trend that we're going to see play out for a long time after the pandemic is over.
Yeah, I think that's true too. I don't think we're going back to the way things used to be. And I think it has a lot to do with, there have been some major cultural and social disruptions, which probably should have happened a long time ago, right? So these things happen, and so they've reset a lot of our minds as to the way things should be, and then it probably impacts generations, in different ways. You and I think, are in the Gen X generation, and we're now getting up into our careers, and we've seen things change. And the millennials lead in different ways, right? And so there are also generational trends too. So you mentioned technology. Generational trends really are part of that cultural shift and change. And so, it seems millennials are because they're in leadership positions now. They're leading firms, and they lead in different ways with different beliefs and things. So how is some of that going to impact maybe the future? And when I say the future, probably I mean the succession planning of baby boomers, if they're still in the profession, and the Gen X. How do you see some of that, the millennials teaching us or playing out in some of the succession and taking over leadership?
Yeah, and that's
a big
you're
question.
right. They are moving into leadership positions. I think, I want to say, if it hasn't happened already, within the next couple of years, just people looking at the numbers, that millennials were going to be the most populous generation in the workforce in very short order. And again, it's almost become kind of a cliche to talk about millennials, but we've been doing it for so long. But, here's what's going to happen. I mean, a lot of us older folks have been first complaining about it and then kind of fearing it and wondering what the future is going to look like. But there's really not a whole lot we can do about it, right?
That's right.
They're now the game in terms of our workforce, and the way they work is going to be the way that we all work.
That's right.
In very short order, right? Those millennials are going to bring their wants and needs and expectations into those leadership positions, and enacting that type of mindset throughout their organization. So I don't know that there's a whole lot that we can do about it, and I don't know that it really matters at this point. I mean, it's something that happens with every generation.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the interesting thing about millennials and Gen Z, the even younger
Yeah.
generation that is now starting to emerge from college and enter the workforce,
Yeah.
right? I think the thing that I think is kind of exciting and different about them is their ability to manage and embrace change.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
they were born into this world, right? I mean,
Yeah.
chaos is just the way it is for them, and I think
Right.
they're going to come into the workforce and into leadership positions with an ability to embrace change and pivot in ways that you and I just can't. We struggle with it,
Yeah.
right? It's just
Yeah.
we're much. We were born in a time when things just didn't change that much, and so we're struggling with this kind of new stuff. And I think these younger leaders coming into these positions are going to be able to handle that way better than you and I ever could. So I think that kind of makes me it's encouraging and exciting, I think, at the same time, and bodes well for the future of our profession.
Yeah. And I guess that's why I think we older generations sometimes do fear upcoming trends, right? Technology or generational changes or cultural shifts, or I don't know, maybe every generation is like that. We see some things changing early on, and we fear it at first, right? And I guess maybe that's true of just about humans, right? And when we look back, that's when we can make sense of the pattern we were seeing. But I guess it's because we couldn't understand it. And I think we're right now in the middle of something we can't understand. But I think we all see there's a seismic shift that's happening, and it's cool that millennials, Gen Z, have a sense of having experienced shifting sand in their life all the time. And maybe they probably don't even realize it at the moment, how much that's helped them foundationally to not fear a lot of these things. They embrace a lot of these changes and go, yeah, bring it on. And we're like, what the heck does this mean for me and my family? And so I think it's wise to look at generations and how they perceive different things and the things that I think we can learn a lot by watching that.
Oh, without a doubt. I really think that there's something to that. With all these changes, I think the millennials and the younger folks just coming into the workforce, they kind of look at all these changes, and their mindset is basically not to struggle with it or fear it, but just to say, oh, so this is what we're doing now. Okay, I get it. And we're not doing it the old way anymore. We're going here. And I think that they've just had to adapt over and over and over again, much faster than we have traditionally had to. And so I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Well, one thing you and I, as we were moving into our careers, technology was a huge deal for us, because we entered our careers with no technology, and really early on, I remember getting a computer on my desk at work, and it was like, we were sharing one before that, and then everybody got one, and it's like, whoa, and that was so massive, and that's like a big old person joke now, I guess, but so I even remember. At that point, things really started changing about what technology is going to do to the accounting profession, right? And so early on, really, that fear of you're going to be replaced was a big mantra that we heard a lot. Some people still say it. It's not as much. I think people have more balanced that accurately to say, no, technology is to stay, and it's going to help us serve better. But I do think a lot of people have, as we always do when we see trends, we move towards wrong sides, one or the other. And a lot of firms, we've seen a lot of younger firms have leaned towards letting technology do a lot of the service-related work that I believe is core to our profession. That is that human-to-human care, Advisory is a human to human thing. Leadership is very intimate and human. And so there are parts that technology really can aid us in being stronger, more efficient, bigger companies that can scale. But there's some parts of it that it can't take away from a professional service industry, maybe manufacturing, but what we're talking about is our profession. So how do you compare the human side and its need and that it will never go away with balancing that with you do need technology. You need to move some of your processes from a human-based process to a technology-based process. Like, how do you balance those two things? They're both here to stay, I think.
Oh, without a doubt. And I think it was Tom Peters in one of his books kind of put it in a way that I think is really insightful. In talking about technology, right, and this kind of fear of it coming in and replacing jobs and all that. He likes to say it's a case of AI versus IA, right? AI, artificial intelligence. It's the thing that everyone's kind of talking about nowadays. IA is what he calls intelligence augmented, right? And I think that I think that's where the sweet spot is for technology, is that it augments what we do, right?
Cool.
It takes all the stuff that eats up all of our time and that busy work and does it faster and more accurately than we ever could anyway. So
which is what we want it to do.
Technology do what it does good, and then we can do what we do. There was and I actually happen to have this in front of me. There's a quote from Kathy Engelbert, who was CEO of Deloitte at the time. This is a few years old now, but and she said that also in a way that I think is really insightful. She said, I still believe professional judgment and expertise is not replaceable by machines. I've never met a machine with courage and empathy, one that can read body language and adjust what they say. She said, while we're going to digest larger volumes of data and information, the key is to use artificial intelligence to augment what the human does. Using these technologies to augment human intelligence and find the insights in the data is more important than ever. So I think it's really kind of, it's humans and machines learning to play nice together. And we're still kind of like figuring it out in a lot of ways. But I think that for the time being anyway, that's where we ought to be focused on as a profession is, okay, let's let these machines do what they do, and then we can use that technology to augment our ability to to bring that human side to what we do and to help our clients improve their businesses and their lives. And so I think that it's not an and or. It's a yes and.
Very cool. And that quote sounds like she was describing the IA part of what Tom Peters was saying very specifically. So I love how she said it. And I don't know that our profession maybe has embraced all of that, but I think a lot of people are understanding that truth. But I mean, but I still think some people, probably those younger generations, are moving a lot of the human-centered work, or I'm guessing, I don't know, towards more of the technology. And and it feels like sometimes it's happening in different ways. Like, for example, we just the work we do in our firm is very advisory based, so it's always very consultative. It's very human based, and so we're always leading people to lead other people. And they're moving to our firm because they specifically said, if we need the other firm, we have to hit tickets. We got to do a ticketing system with them. And they're like, we can't do a ticketing system. We need people to lead us, guide us, but the ticketing system's not wrong. It's just knowing how to use these things in the middle of professional services with clients, that is entrepreneurs we serve, who go through the fear and the ups and downs and the struggles. They need somebody to walk with them and embrace them and give them courage sometimes. And like the quote said, technology can't impart that empathy. So,
No, absolutely. I mean, and I think when it comes right down to it, this is a human profession, right? I mean,
mhm.
it's all about our relationship with people, the more we talk about all these technologies and the exponential pace of change and all this other stuff, I think this is what I'm seeing is like a great paradox for our time, right? We
Mm.
in this age of automation and technology and all that, the skills that we need to thrive going forward are really human skills. We're talking about things
Nice.
like collaboration and communication and
Yeah. Mm.
leadership and critical thinking and all those things. So it's really kind of an interesting paradox as we're talking about technology. The stuff that we really need to get good at has nothing to do with blockchain or AI or anything like that. It's all about our relationships with our clients and customers. And
That's wild. And
um,
even the technology companies building those amazing tools are developers and leaders collaborating with one another in
mhm,
innovative ways to solve really difficult problems. That is humans in a room battling through the creativity of their minds to solve those problems. And I
that's
think
right.
we're saying that's never going to go away ever. The innovation of new things didn't magically appear. It was humans getting in a room and going, I have an idea, and battling through what it's going to mean and how it needs to look for a market to then embrace it and pay for it.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
You know?
yeah. I think you're absolutely right. And I would also argue that this talk about like human skills and things like that. We've been talking about how it impacts our ability to add greater value to our clients' lives, but it is just as important, if not more so, in how we deal with our own staff, our
Mm,
employees, the people
yeah.
who work for us, right? I mean, if we don't take care of them, if we don't learn these types of human skills and be able to apply them in how we lead our own teams,
Yeah.
they're not going to be able to do good work for their clients, right? So I think
Yeah.
it's become very quickly apparent, at least to me, that this notion, I think Tom Peters calls it extreme humanism,
Yeah.
but it's really become a leadership skill for not just today, but for forever going forward, right? I mean, we're going to have to get really good at becoming much more human in how we interact with not only our clients and customers, but with our own employees.
Yeah. That's wild. I've never heard yet somebody say, we got to get better at becoming more human. All we hear is we got to be better at AI, blockchain, understanding technology. I think we're seeing that now is a table stakes, right? That is just like foundationally, you're not going to compete as a business unless you use technology. We went through the where it was people were battling over the cloud, right? And so some people still don't leverage the cloud, and it at this point it just starts to not make much sense, that people aren't, making the leverage of some of the best technology. But when I think I heard that term extreme humanism from you when you were actually interviewing Tom Peters on your podcast, and he
Mm-hmm.
even said things like he hates using the word assets when talking about people or human resources. Like he's a guy that kind of tells you what he's thinking, right? He doesn't really hold back typically.
Yeah,
So
not at all.
he hates that. And so has that influenced you and how you believe in the human centric need of our profession, or is that something you've always understood about our
I mean,
profession?
I think it's been kind of lingering there in the background, but
Yeah.
Tom Peters and what he's written it really has kind of driven it home for me in a big way. His latest book, right there, if I can
Mm.
get it in front of the camera for you,
There we go.
Extreme
Yeah.
Humanism, Excellence Now, Extreme Humanism. But he
Nice.
leads off, like the very first page in the book has what he calls the Leadership Seven.
Nice.
He calls it the Leadership COVID-19 Seven. In fact, new skills that we're going to need thanks to
Wow.
acceleration of COVID. And I want to read them to you because
Yeah.
it kind of drives home what we're
Great.
talking about. So the leadership 7 are: be kind, be caring, be patient, be forgiving, be positive, be present, and walk in the other person's shoes.
Nice.
And there's not an ounce of technology in any of those
No,
things, right?
those
But
are
it's
pretty basic human centric views,
it's there's another podcast interview I did was with a guy named Richard Sheridan, no relation, but
Yeah.
he wrote a book called Joy Inc. How we built a workplace that people love, and he's the CEO and co-founder of a kind of a small software company out in Michigan called Menlo Innovations.
Mm-hmm.
But they do, I mean, it's really interesting to see what's going on there. Like, I was interviewing him and he was in his office, but his office it's all glass. So you can see through it and see out onto the floor.
Okay.
And out on the floor, there are no walls at all. It's just a bunch of people, and they're in like chairs with wheels, and they're sliding from one table to another to go talk to this person. And then, but they also do things. For instance, they have this concept that they call the Menlo Babies, right? And how it got started was they had an employee who had just had a baby and was struggling to find childcare, and she went and talked with Richard Sheridan. And he said, "Well, why don't you just bring the baby to work, and we'll figure it out, right?" and so they did. And what they started to see happening was, if the mom wasn't around to take care of the baby, like right that instant, she was in a meeting or something like that, other team members would jump in and do it for her, right? And say, "Look, it's like, it's my turn to hold the baby," right? And so they've actually had 7 or 8 what they call Menlo Babies kind of come through and grow up and become young adults.
Wow. And
it's really, so he has, so here's another quote. I hate throwing quotes at you, but this just drives this point home.
Yeah.
So this is Richard Sheridan. He says, "We look to embrace the life of each team member in whatever way makes sense for the business and the person. Not all the experiments we run are as joy-filled as the baby stories. These are the team members who had to care for a spouse or a parent during protracted illness or worse, right? These events are personal and painful, but they happen in real life, and a company needs to be flexible and open enough to deal with them. Every organization needs to make room for the time or effort a person needs for his or her personal life, and the dividends of this effort are not measured in business terms." So I think that's what Tom Peters is talking about when he talks about extreme humanism in one way, right? It also, this concept of extreme humanism applies to how we deal with our clients and customers as well, or our vendors, or anybody that we're doing business with, right? But it's just this notion that you're not talking to an asset, you're not talking to a human resource, you're talking to a human being who has a name and a life, and we need to always keep that in mind. As we do our work. So
and with your team, they have situations in their life that come up that they don't plan for, that they sometimes didn't create. Like Richard Sheridan mentioned, protracted illness of a family member, having a child. These are things that happen, right? And he's saying you need to care for those situations that happen in your team's lives, and they may not have a business purpose behind them, meaning we may not produce profit out of caring for somebody like that. Actually, it may cost us money, but they're saying, and I think Tom Peters would say, those are investments worth making.
And I would add to that, it may cost us money, I would say, in the short term.
Short term, yeah.
But what do we make in the long term from an employee who sees us treating them that way, and they become more loyal, more productive, They're
Yeah.
willing to get more engaged in their work.
Yeah.
They're not as likely to leave, which saves us money in terms of
Oh,
having
yeah.
to replace that person.
Yeah.
So I think there's Richard Sheridan says the dividends are not measured in business terms, but I think in a certain way they are. I think if we get good at this, there's a bottom line component to it that we might not see initially, but it's there.
Well, yeah, for sure. And, we've, just like every firm in the profession right now, we had a few people leave and we replaced them with other people. And that's extremely disruptive to a company,
Yeah.
especially in our firm, which has a pretty heavy advisory component to it. When you replace some of the advisors in your company, your clients get pretty, little nervous, kind of shifting people that are advising them and leading them. And so all of this is speaking to another trend we're dealing with it, which I think is coming out of COVID that we're going to have to sort through, which is the labor market really being so weird. I can only use a word weird because nobody understands it. And again, we lead a lot of firms in Thriveal, so we coach and consult a lot of firms, and we're seeing them have a lot of revenue, and all the people disappearing to hire to perform the work for that revenue. And it's such an odd market where the market wants what a firms offer, right? Of course, and totally, we had to serve through the pandemic. Our profession really got strapped with the PPP management, all the credit management that we're doing. So we're doing so much work and we can't find the people. And so what do you think about that trend coming out of COVID? Is where are the people? How can we hire people? It's everywhere. And I think it's not just our profession. So what have you heard about that trend?
It is everywhere, and you're right. It's real. It was. We were starting to see it before COVID, and I think it's like everything. COVID has kind of accelerated that trend as well.
Yeah,
but I mean,
for sure.
I think the data from the AICPA was. So, and I'm reading right here from a report, like a 4% decrease in total accounting graduates from 2017 to 2018. So 4% in 1 year. And that was the third year in a row, and it's continued.
Wow. Yeah, okay.
So that's accounting graduates. Now, NASBA says that the number of CPA exam sections taken each year has been steadily dropping. It was like 310,000 in 2016, dropped to 248,000 in 2019. So that's fewer people taking the exam.
Yeah.
And I think what they said was it all kind of translates to, there's fewer accounting graduates studying accounting, and those that graduate are less inclined to become CPAs, right? I think they said only 1 in 3 accounting graduates ultimately is becoming a CPA.
Yeah.
We're seeing the same thing, maybe even a little bit worse in Maryland. So,
that's a trend I wanted to ask about. The future of our labor market. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is real, and it is troubling. This whole pipeline discussion is certainly, it's risen very quickly to the top of people's minds in the profession. I think the latest study from the AICPA said that people issues, the pipeline was the number one concern of pretty much every CPA firm that wasn't like a sole practitioner, right?
For sure.
So it is real. How do we get them in there? I mean, there's an element, I think, of extreme humanism in all of that. How do we, the ones who do well at this are going to have those types of leadership skills that are very human centric and human focused and focused on better serving their people. In terms of getting people into the profession, if I had the answer to that, I'd be making a whole lot more money than I am right now. But I talked to another gentleman, Alan Jagalinzer, who's an accounting professor at Oxford, I think, University.
Cool. Yeah.
But he does a lot of counseling with accounting majors over there.
Very cool.
And what he was seeing, he said he started seeing some really troubling trends. Like people who are, even the ones who are in accounting, studying
Yeah.
accounting, were getting burned out. They were almost fearful of. They were seeing their
Wow.
future kind of play out in front of them, right? And they
Yeah.
weren't really crazy about going to work for a big four firm or something
Wow.
like that. And
Yeah.
so he's been counseling them, and I think some of the stuff that he said is really insightful. He sat down with this one woman who was having these types of fears, and he just said really simply, "What are you passionate about? Right? What really jazzes you, gets you excited?" And she started talking about how much she loves, hiking in the outdoors and camping and things like that. And he said, "Well, companies like REI, they've got an accounting department, right?
True. Right.
You don't have to. You don't. You can apply your passions. Anything that you're passionate about probably has a finance function attached to it in some way, right?
Yeah.
So,
Good point.
So I think the more that we can help people see that too, the more the more they're liable to stay in the profession and find that type of passion and joy in what they do and apply it to accounting and finance. So I don't, like I said, I don't know what the answer is to the pipeline issues. So I think we're still dealing with all that, but I think there's some things that we each individually can do to kind of increase the chances that our firms and organizations are going to do okay in terms of finding the right talent, the right people, and keeping them.
For sure. And so we're talking about future trends, right? Which we have no clue how those are going to play out. But but what we can do is respond now. And in labor markets like this, one thing we have to do as firm leaders is be those stronger leaders. Read books by Tom Peters. Come into the Thriveal community where we really focus on the human side of leadership and sacrifice and empathy. And so we can be the places where people want to join and stay. And that is a business function. When they join, we need them to stay, because when they leave, that disruption is so much more difficult now, because replacing somebody is so much harder to do in a market like this. So now the burden's on us to lead well. And, I think we need a lot of accountability to do that, which is why we have a community, which is why we have a podcast. But I think it's great to encourage people too, that this is an amazing profession. I mean, you get to show your skills of leadership, consulting. You get to transform lives. And a lot of accounting firm owners haven't figured this out. You get to price your services really whatever you want to price them, right? There is no ceiling to that. I don't know that our profession has really figured that out, because that's a whole nother trend and conversation that many people work through and deal with. But especially in the advisory side, it can be just a really enjoyable place that really challenges you to be creative. There's so much creativity in our firm and the options we have to create to solve the problems for the advisory clients. So, I'm encouraging people, if they're listening, to stay in this profession, because the future is bright. And of course, we need somebody to lead our firms in the future. They're all disappearing. That pipeline is going to cause some issues later, and we don't know what it is. Even now, we're seeing mergers and acquisitions among smaller firms, and this is an anecdotal pattern we've seen. So this is not anything I've seen documented, but we deal with a lot of the smaller firms, 10 people and under, which is really the majority of our profession. I don't know if most people know that, but I don't know, what is it, about 40,000 small firms, 10 and under? I don't know.
It's. I mean, I think we're kind of a microcosm of business in general, right? It's really small businesses that drive the economy. So
and that's what we do. We do as firms, and so I think it's up to us to lead well, through those trends. So it's very cool. Okay, so Bill, just a few more questions. What's one thing maybe firm leaders, like if you had the chance to coach firm owners and you've seen them operating really from a great perspective, right? You've not been doing the firm leadership, but you have been watching and teaching people about how to lead in those firms for a long time. What are some things you would say, hey, if I'm looking at all these trends and patterns and the future patterns that I have no clue are going to play out, you need to probably be working on these one or two things or three things. What would those things be that you'd want to coach people to start embracing and changing?
I think the most important thing that I would say is, especially for people who are established as leaders, maybe our generation or older. I mean, it's not too late, right? Yeah. And you're not too old. It's a mindset more than anything. Sure. I've talked with folks who, about these trends, whose opinion was basically, and I'm paraphrasing, but they were basically saying, I'm just hoping, to retire before any of this impacts me, right? And let somebody else deal with it. But it's, it's not too late. Are you willing to unlearn what you've known and what's gotten you here and relearn a few new things that can better position you for what's to come? So, and if you are unwilling to do that, then that's going to be really, really hard. That notion of lifelong learning has never been more important. I think it was Robert Safian. This was from Fast Company. He was the editor of Fast Company magazine a number of years ago. And he said something to the effect of that the most important skill any of us can have today is the ability to learn new skills. And I think that that's really true, and that's never been more important. So, for those who are fearful and say, I'm not sure I've got what it takes to get through this, you do, and it's not too late, and it's just, it all comes down to your willingness to say, okay, we need to do some things differently, and I need to learn how to do that. And so it really is a mindset more than anything of just embracing this notion of unlearning and relearning and lifelong learning. So
yeah, for sure. And there's places to learn those things, right? Thriveal, MACPA, Business Learning everywhere. Institute, you teach a lot of those things. So it's amazing. So thanks, Bill. I think hopefully what we've said has been encouraging to people. I know we're trying to figure out some of the patterns together and the trends, which we can't figure out. So we'll know those one day. But we were able to point out some things that are real, that we are seeing, that everybody's dealing with. So any last word to encourage people as we kind of wrap up here?
Yeah, I think, I don't know, I've heard it said a million times lately, but I think it's true. This really is an exciting time. Cool. We've talked about some stuff that a lot of people are going to listen to this and be a little apprehensive or scared, or the future is uncertain, and it is. But it's we're kind of building the blueprint for the future of this profession as we go, right? And I think we can make it whatever we want. And we're kind of in that transitional period right now where a lot of new things are coming to play, and it's up to us to kind of figure out how all that works out. So I think it's a really, really exciting time to be in the profession, to be thinking about joining the profession and coming in. Because we're going to see a lot of new things happening very quickly, and we all get to be a part of it. So I think that's cool. Where people ought to focus, not on the uncertainty, but on our ability to impact the future of the profession. I don't think it's ever been greater than it is today.
Wow, I've never thought of it that way, but truly we're having to build stuff we've never had to build before, right? So we're laying the blueprint for the future. So that is freaking encouraging to me. Because I've got years ahead of me to keep doing this after many years in it. So, well, cool. Well, Bill, it's been great to have you. People need to read the things you're writing. Like, what's the best place to find you and find you online?
I'd say macpa.org is kind of home base for us. Our blog is there. Our podcast is there. We're spending more and more time doing what you're doing here, talking to really, really smart folks about the future of the profession. So our podcast is called Future Proof. available, as they say, wherever you get your podcasts. So
Yep.
I would say that those would probably be the best places to find us and to hear a little bit more about what we're doing at the MACPA to help
Yeah.
make our members and the profession at large just a little more future ready, right?
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
That's our mission and our purpose.
Well, you guys do it well, and everybody knows in the profession, you and Tom don't just impact Maryland. y'all are leaders in the whole profession, probably even globally too. So, thanks, Bill, for being with us on the Thrivecast. I really appreciate you coming and joining us, man.
I appreciate being here and your interest and your time. Thank you so much, Jason.
Right.
It's been fun.
All right, thanks, Bill. We'll see you. Take care, man.